14, and there it is. So maybe, Kylie, this is your image. What do you think of an 11 by 14 crop on it? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I kind of like the empty space to the side personally, but yeah, that works too.
No, I do as well, but let's do it this way first. Let's crop it because maybe this is the most obvious one. So you have to do this 11 by 14 ratio, hit done. And then when you export it, this is where you resize it. Okay, and I'm sure everyone can handle this because we've gone over it quite a few times in this term. I'm going to put it on my desktop and start a subfolder called Portfolio Friday. You could change the text if you want. Call it. You should number them. I'll talk about that in a second. So I'll call this 01. So the assignment is bonus portfolio. This is 01. This is my opening image, my first one that I want to use. So I'll rename it. Fine. JPEG, absolutely. Probably sRGB is okay. Like if this is the final JPEG file ready for printing or whatever, or to put online, sRGB is fine. And we're going to resize the long edge 14 inches. And this is pretty universal if we crop this way or that way. And just for fun, I'm going to open this in Photoshop afterwards. So right at the bottom here, usually it's set for do nothing, but I can open it in Photoshop to check it. So let's hit export. So that's an 11 by 14. That's one way to do it. And if you guys have cropped 8 by 10 and you like the 8 by 10 crop, the 11 by 14 ratio is just a little bit, on this case, you lose a little bit top and bottom. Okay, so 8 by 10 is kind of close to 11 by 14. It's not exact. So if your JPEG's 8 by 10, just tweak it to 11 by 14. And here in Photoshop, we'll check the file size, image size, and it's an 11 by 14 at 300. Done. Okay, there is one way to do it. Back into Lightroom. Let's undo that crop. So that space is beautiful. And I encourage you to do this. If you like this, don't crop it to make it fit in 11 by 14. I always say that. Keep it like it is, Kylie, and let's export this. Export, and our settings should be the same. So let's call this number 2. And the settings should be the same. We're going to make 14 inches on the long edge, so we'll hit export. And it's going to open up in Photoshop too. I hope this makes sense. This isn't an 11 by 14. This is a 14 by 9.33333, whatever. So we have to add canvas to this to make it an 11 by 14, and that's up here under image. Right underneath image size is canvas size, and we can add canvas. Think like a painting, like you're going to add canvas anywhere you want. In this case, we're going to leave the width 14. That's fine, but we have to add to the height 11, and I'm going to use white as the canvas extension. And as long as this dot is in the middle, it'll add white equally top and bottom. And make sure relative is unchecked. If it's checked, it'll cause you a problem. So hit OK. And let's check our image size. So this is now an 11 by 14 at 300. Okay. On this image, Kylie, I don't particularly like this technique on any image because it's just I don't know, it's just like we're adding white space. What do you want to call those? Like ribbons or bands or whatever. And it's just like, it looks like an untrimmed print to me, okay? But it does qualify. So I'll show you some other ways to do it. Let's take another horizontal, and we'll take Casey's here. So if this is the final crop, great. Let's export this like we just did. Call this number 3. It's going to be 14 on the long side. Actually, maybe I should have changed that, but I'll show you a way to cheat this out here. So image size is 14. Let's make it smaller. Let's make it 12. And I'm resizing this, so be a little bit careful. I'm actually sizing down, which is okay. If your image is an 8 by 10, you'll be sizing up, which could still be okay because it's not much of a big change. So, just the whole resizing thing you got to be aware of a bit. So I'm going to shrink this down. So 12 by whatever, 7.8, hit OK. So it's smaller. Now when I add canvas, it's going to add canvas all the way around, 14 by 11. So this is what I want to end up with, a 14 by 11. Add white all the way around. I think this is better. Okay, so now we're talking about a portfolio quality image. It's got a frame around it. Think about if you sent something out to be framed, like in my wall back there. It's got a white border around it, right? So it's called a mat. So I think this looks really good for portfolio images. What do you guys think? One thing to be careful of here, if we surround an image by white, it's almost an optical illusion. The image looks a bit darker. So a common thing I do is a little curves adjustment. So I hope that makes sense. So I'm kind of just lifting the middle, the mids, the whole image essentially, but just lightening it a little bit. And I think it works better, especially if you're surrounded by white. See how it starts to go a little bit muddy because the white is nice and crisp and clean and stuff. So that's a common fix. You can do it here in Photoshop and then save this. You can maybe do it in Lightroom, just lighten it a bit before you export it. Okay. Let's try another one. Let's try Scott's vertical. Maybe we'll keep it color, Scott. Maybe here, I'm not sure what crop this is or if it will fit in 11 by 14. Let's try it. So you cropped at 8 by 10, so see how it's going to take a little bit off the shorter edge. So that's an 11 by 14 ratio. So I'll leave it up to you, Scott. This works. You can export this as it is. It's almost cropped 11 by 14, so keep it 11 by 14. I think works fine. Hand it in. And this is good, you guys. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this is called a full bleed. It's an 11 by 14. It is what it is. There's no border around it. So I would say if your crop ratio is close to this, leave it and don't add any white canvas around it. That one looks like it's about an 11 by 14, so the same kind of thing. Recrop it here, a little bit off the top and bottom. So I guess initially this wasn't 8 by 10. Sorry, reset that. So if I change this to 8 by 10, nothing changes. So, yep. So Savannah, you crop this 8 by 10. So you could change it to 11 by 14. You'll lose a little bit, and boom, that's it. Done. Export it. Another consideration is maybe I can't remember how I cropped this one, Matt. Let's take a peek. It's the custom crop, is it? So I mean, don't overthink this. Crop, yes, to improve composition. Got it. Maybe from here you could export this as a not 14 on the long edge. Maybe you'll make it a bit smaller. Maybe we'll make it smaller here. So maybe we'll make it 12 inches on the long edge. And we'll call this number 5 just to keep track. So how many ways am I up to? If I keep going, I'm really going to confuse you. Okay, so it's smaller. It's 8 by 12 inches. This is file size. So let's add canvas to this. Yeah, 8 by 12. That's almost the ratio right from our cameras, actually. Like an uncropped image. Our sensors are like a 2 by 3 ratio. So 8 by 12 is the same as 2 by 3. So let's say this is right out of the camera, Matt, and you don't want to crop it. I've made it smaller so we can add canvas now. We'll make it 14 by 11. Bingo. So I'll leave it up to you. Maybe one more way. Let's do this. In Photoshop. Let's start in Photoshop. Let's create a new file, and maybe you could create your 11 by 14s here. And I'll call this 06. Is the number I'm at. Hey, I've almost got a portfolio. I got 6 images. And here you could set the dimensions, okay? 14 by 11 by 300 wide. So this is going to be a landscape orientation, background white. And if you do this a lot, some students do, you could save this as a preset up here and call it landscape portfolio. So you don't have to go in and reset all these things again. So there's your 11 by 14 with no image on it. Bingo. So let's grab an image. Maybe we'll pick this one here from Atlanta. Actually, let's do this. Let's go find this image without even exporting, doing anything from Lightroom. Bingo. So there's your image there. I'm just going to make some room here. Okay, so this JPEG you're happy with and you want to hand it in as a portfolio print. It hasn't been resized, so it's probably going to be too big. If you click and drag it into this Photoshop window, boom, it pops in. And it turns out it is an 11 by 14 crop. Doing it this way, it comes in as a smart object, so it's a little bit of a different way to do it. But if you click on the top corner and hold the Option key, you could change the size of it. And you could add this white border if you want. No real math here. I would say that's too much white, and then I would say that's not enough white. So I'll leave it up to you guys. So there's, a nice 1.5 inch white all the way around. Looks pretty good. So that's transforming is what that was. I was pulling on a corner, but holding the Option key does it from the middle. So let's say We like that. Uh, check mark to commit to it, and that's perfectly acceptable too. One more thing you could do to this image. So it's an 11 by 14 because we created it first. So you could create some blank canvases and drag your images in. I would say if you're putting a border on your images, you have to put a border on all your images. So it's 6 image portfolio, not very many, but they all should have a consistent look, okay? And next thing you can do here, I want to lighten this up a little bit because I think it's a bit dark. Bingo. Probably could use a little bit more contrast here, right? Let's add another curves, and we'll do a contrast curve. So Photoshop stuff, whatever. But I think one issue we have is if you've got areas that are light in the image, especially sky, and it's pushing to white, and then it's starting to touch on the white border, I think you need to separate that somehow. And the way you do that is with a stroke or an edge. And if I click on this one layer, you could access this here under the FX, and it's called a stroke. There's other ways to access this, but this is probably the best. I think it's under here, edit. It's grayed out right now, but there's a stroke under edit as well. You'll get the same kind of dialog box. And what it's going to do is drop a little black line around the image, and that's called a key line. Don't make it large, like 10 pixels or something bigger. It's just too much. It should be almost unnoticeable. So 2 to 3 pixels at the most. Let's make a 3 pixel one. Got it. 100% opacity, yes. You have an option for inside, outside, or center. I have inside, so it's inside the image. And there's a lot of ways to do this, but let's do that. Okay, and I think that helps. It just cleans it up a little bit, just puts a nice little line around the image. Beautiful. Makes a great print, by the way. No, there's no exam for this class. And if you can't remember what I just did, I made a video that showed you about 4 different ways to do it. So on Fench Online for this class, contents, weekly videos, this is what I put. There's no video for the keynote because there is no real keynote, but I put a video that goes over these techniques. Okay, so hope that helps. Someone in my other class asked about drop shadows. I'm not a big fan of them. I used to be, but not anymore. I think I would drop shadow crazy for a couple of years, and then I think I was going this way. So I could show you some of my old portfolio. Everything had a key line and drop shadows. Key lines I like. I think it's a nice finishing touch, let's say. Drop shadows, not so much. Wrong way. Okay, and doing it this way under the FX button is kind of neat because you can always turn them on and off, and you can always go back and re-edit. You know, so if I think that stroke is too big, I can take it down 1 pixel. Crazy amount of control. Okay, I'm going to turn off the drop shadow. Don't like it. So I'll leave that up to you. Last thing to talk about is I've been kind of numbering these as I go, and I want you guys to number your images too. It even says that in here. Label images in the order that you want them to be viewed. So if we think about that the Padlet thing. This one I labeled as the first one, so this would be the first image. And this is, we're not creating an actual portfolio book this term. Next term, we will be printing and making one with 11 by 14 prints. Cross your fingers. And then you get to decide which is your first image and which is the second and third image. And image number 2 and 3. So these two images now will appear side by side if we were making a spread type of thing. So that's kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about portfolios is consider, well, I've got some duplicate images in here, sorry. But consider which image is first, and the kind of psychology behind a portfolio is your strongest image is your first image. So a person viewing it and the first images they see is like, wow, and they want to see more. And then consider, in this case, there's 6 images. So images number 2 to 3, that's kind of filler images. And 4 and 5 is filler. And then the last image is maybe the second best. Or maybe a different image. So you're kind of leaving the viewer with a lasting impression, let's say. So start strong, first image. Consider the middle ones to kind of match as pairs, and then consider the last one to be a lasting image. Hope that helps. And not that one, where's my Photoshop one? So this one I liked, I think I'll save this as number 6. So labeling file size is important. This is going to be a JPEG. I'm going to put it into my portfolio collection. I usually reduce the file size of my JPEGs to about 10. I'll show you why. I mean, it's 1.9 megabytes and 12 is 5.7. So, from 6 megabytes down to 2, and it's just easier files to handle just because of the file size, basically. And 10 is a good quality, so it's still at maximum. Bingo. So there's my 6 image portfolio right there, except we've got 2 of the same, so we can't have that. Okie doke. So we don't have to change all the photos crops to 11 by 14. The images, the JPEGs, have to be 11 by 14. So Matt, 2 options: you crop to 11 by 14, or you just make them smaller and make them fit on 11 by 14. That's in Photoshop. And I would say if you have an elongated image, you're going to have to think about adding a border, and something like that works. Okay, so lots of options. End of the day, the JPEGs have to be 11 by 14 inches at 300 pixels. So if you wanted to do a pixel count on that, let me change this to pixels. 3,300 by 4,200 pixels. Hope that helps. Hope that's not too confusing. And it's due next Friday. And the last thing I want you guys to try out before we call it a day for this class is this thing here. If you could put some more comments in. I think Scott's the only one that added a comment. Just type on add a comment and type away, and I'll just see what they look like when they come in. That's going to be helpful to me. I put everyone in the class up here. If you're not going to do portfolio, fine. You don't have to do. I'll just eliminate this. So I'll make up a new portfolio for this class, Padlet. And whoever has submitted a portfolio, I'll put your names in. And you guys have to populate this yourself. Okay, I'm not going to do it. And type in some comments. So the last thing to ask for you guys for today is if you could put some comments in here on Aiden's shot and Scott's. Casey put one in here. Matt's got one in here too.